So the Venom movie came out, and a lot of people are basically giving it a positive review, if you will, because of the fact that essentially, as far as competition goes, it really ain't got nothing. Now, we all know exactly how to feel about the Joker movie, Joker 2, if you will, and the colossal stupid bomb that was for absolutely no reason other than the director's sheer unrelenting hubris. But in retrospect, Venom 3 is not a movie that is by any means bad like Joker 2. It's not a movie that is essentially an unwatchable movie like Megapolis. It's not something that you can essentially not go to theaters to, that you should be barred from the theaters to go see if you want to, considering the fact that a lot of people have praised it as being basically a fun movie that they enjoy on similar to the same level as the first movie. Now, with all that being said, I guess I should say in my approach or my conclusion for the movie and how I felt after seeing it is that this movie had the exact same effect that Avengers Endgame had, where the movie as a whole is incredibly stupid. It's poorly written, it's very dumb. It seems as if the people who decided the different critical plot points within this movie just failed to understand basic concepts like, hey, we're going to shoot a net at Venom underwater, and for some reason this goo can't get through a webbed net. Why? It's they're underwater and he's made out of goo. That shouldn't be an issue for him. Or we're going to essentially forget all of the different story elements that we used as major repercussions or issues within having a symbiote from the other two movies that essentially are just kind of glossed over in this movie in order to just usher in whatever we want. You have all of that stuff happening within, as well as like these somber, sad little ridiculous moments of just kind of quiet reflection on the task at hand rather than something that's actually poignant or character driven. It All of those things are basically shoehorned into this movie, along with an action-packed end scene, which takes up a majority of the third act, that essentially kind of makes you forget about all of the stupid shit that you just had to witness in order for you to essentially tell yourself, no, this movie was good, or I had fun looking at it. It was fun because, you're left with the cool action scene, which I'm not gonna deny was actually really good, and honestly, the only part of the movie that I actually genuinely liked. Exactly like Avengers Endgame. All then to have it end with a finale of a self-sacrifice moment of a, oh no, you gotta go, but you're doing it for the greater good. And I can't help but think that that is the only reason that essentially so many people are essentially giving this movie such praise and passing it off as a good movie, because of the fact that essentially they're doing the exact same thing they've done with Avengers Endgame and every other movie that has copied that structure of a story after Avengers Endgame. It's not good because it completely undermines everything that you've witnessed in the prior movies, similar to Avengers Endgame, as well as it has just this so unrelenting foreboding concept of just, well, you know who's gonna die, and all to usher in a big bad that they don't even get to, um, which, much to the credit of Sony's stupid way of tackling all of these Spider-Man characters, they've essentially made it to where your big bad is someone that we don't even show, but maybe he'll show up later on. Even then, you essentially get rid of your titular character, only to then tease that you can't get rid of your titular character, because otherwise, what would be the point of Big Bad? Because his Infinity Stones is the thing that the titular character actually has. So nothing makes sense in anything that they did within this movie. But so many people just sit there and just go, "No, I had fun," and it's like it's a smoke and mirrors type deal. You've been tricked, and you've been tricked before, and you liked it, so it's just happening again. It just doesn't change that it's still stupid, but it's like you like whatever. Comfort food. People, uh, even if it's bad for you, people still like potato chips. So that's the only thing I can think of as an excuse towards what it is that's being said about Venom 3. I keep wanting to say Venom 2, but Venom 3. Venom 2 god awful. But yeah. Now, quick little breakdown of the movie. The Venom movie basically starts off with Eddie Brock being in the alternate world from the Spider-Man No Way Home, and then essentially he gets sent back to his world. Didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything at the end of that movie. Didn't mean anything at the beginning of this movie, but they did it. Only then for them to showcase that essentially there is a government organization apparently working underneath Area 51 that is hunting down symbiotes. Now, they're they professionally hunt down and study symbiotes. Yet they've never, but they state in the movie that they've never actually captured a host before. Yet at the same time, they're fully aware of everything that a symbiote is capable of doing or that they're willing to do in order to like survive or reproduce or just their basic tendencies and whatnot. All these things make absolutely no sense, considering the fact that later they kind of just come after Venom as if they've fought people like him before over and over and over again. Not only that, but they actively keep multiple symbiotes alive that are just around without a host. And again, if you pay attention to shit, because isn't that kind of what you're supposed to do with sequels and whatnot? In the original Venom movie, they purposely stated that these things can't live without a host for a long period of time, otherwise they just die off. And then it is like they constantly need to feed and eat because that's the stupid thing that they gave to Venom. And then even when getting a host, it's basically kind of a luck of the draw bonding kind of thing. Yet, all of that is thrown out the window for this movie. just all of those rules, fucking forget them. The brain and chocolate thing, fucking forget it. It doesn't matter because the movie doesn't want to talk about it. So obviously it just doesn't matter. Even though those were strict stipulations and rules and plot points for the other movies, right now does not fucking matter. Hell, a dude got a symbiote in Venom 2 that essentially was when you reintroduced to that character, you're told that symbiote left him. So then another one just came along and infected him, I would say. And then that one just basically had all the answers, but at the same time was being cryptic for absolutely no reason other than the fact that they just wanted to string you along for their stupid plot. That's it. That's I completely went off the rails from my summary of what happened. But um, you have him come back to his world. Doesn't really fucking matter. You introduce these army people that essentially are hunting symbiotes. They're now after Venom, but then at the same time later on, Venom finds out that he's actually being hunted by Null. Now, Null in the comics is basically the symbiote god. Dude's a badass that you're not supposed to fuck with. And they introduced him in this movie because someone thought that actually would make sense or that would be a cool thing to do. It's not, but they did it anyway. And unless you honestly care about his concept in the comics, why even do that? So then with Null is essentially being, you then find out that he was sealed away by the symbiotes because the symbiotes are his children, but because of how crazy Null is, they sealed him away, yet he was then able to use his other group of children, which are creatures that can only see the Codex, the one MacGuffin thing that can get him and free him from his eternal prison that the symbiotes sealed him up in. Now, the MacGuffin only appears on a symbiote that is willing to save the life of its host, which seems like something that wouldn't be that rare or shouldn't be that rare, but it apparently is rare. And apparently it happened at the end of the first Venom movie when Eddie Brock died and then Venom saved his life. But for some reason, these things are only starting to appear now, considering the fact that Venom has turned full form with Eddie Brock multiple times after he saved his life from the first movie. But whatever. You know, who cares about logic? So these things show up, and essentially it scares Eddie and Venom to the point where it's like, well, now they no longer can transform fully, which is a big deal considering the fact that the military people are now after them because they basically put out a they put Eddie on like basically the most wanted list, and his face is not plastered everywhere for killing a cop. And for some reason, even though he killed a cop in it's considered that he killed a cop in San Francisco or where in whatever California area they were at. This is like a worldwide American manhunt for one cop getting killed by this guy who's basically all the way in Mexico, yet he's receiving the news about this information. It was weird. It was weird. So then, with the genius brains behind this script, the plan was for him to go all the way to New York in order to blackmail a judge that he had a bunch of dirt on to then try and clear his name based off of the lies that were being spread about him actually killing the cop when he had nothing to do with that whatsoever. That Now that essentially was like a take away from his character, considering the fact that Eddie Brock was such a he was an upstart, outstanding reporter to the point where he literally risked his career to just ask the questions to like a pharmaceutical conglomerate. Just the harsh questions on shit that his company was doing, which led to the initial stuff within the first Venom movie. But you're telling me he knows about a crooked judge, someone who's capable of choosing the fate of other innocent people, and he had this information and he's just kept in his back pocket until now? That makes no sense for him because he seemed like a good guy that's just willing to do dirty things to accomplish his goal, thus helping out the anti hero concept. But you just kind of had that in your back. You just having him have that in his back pocket, being like a get out of jail free card, a literal get out of jail free card, just takes away so much from his character. Now I'm gonna just a little side pivot real quick. Yes, Tom Hardy being Eddie Brock and playing Venom again. I got no problem with anyone that says they enjoy that concept, but to me, the initial concept of Venom from the first movie has so far been detached within these sequels. The second one and the third one have definitely made Venom no longer feel as if he was this presence of a foreboding, strong creature that was inside of Eddie that essentially had some realm of controlling him, but at the same time was bringing out a darker side to him. Now it's more so like this goofy ass buddy cop thing that just isn't entertaining, and it's just not funny. It's not cool. It's just stupid. They just do the silly, goofy Three Stooges type of slapstick shit that again goes out the window when you consider the severity of the situation that they're in, let alone with the overall panhandling that this movie does in order to try and showcase that no, they're friends, they need each other, they've been there for each other for so long, like, oh, he calls him buddy and whatnot. It's like goofy shit, right? So it was like, again, if you like seeing Tom Hardy doing what he do in this movie, fine, but it's still, that doesn't mean that this is entertaining. It's just kind of out there now. It's not that it's not entertaining. It's more so that this is a huge detach from the character now, to the point where it's like, what was the point of even watching the other movies if essentially this is what the end result was going to be? So just disturbing. But again, that was a side pivot. So going back. So while traversing the desert, because he's leaving Mexico and dodging the monsters as well as the military, you got him run along to run across a family, basically a bunch of hippies that want to see aliens, whose dad is the Lizard. This was one of the more confusing aspects about this movie because you had an actor that essentially literally played a Spider-Man villain, and for some reason, you then not have him be an alternate concept of that Spider-Man villain. If he is the guy who played Connors, if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe that I am. But then you not have him, like, incorporate that other Spider-Man villain, which would then tie in your multiverse thing. Instead, you just immediately start off your movie dissing on the concept of multiverses and then thought that, that fixes whatever the fuck you got going on when it doesn't. But then essentially you just use this for some weird, again, pandering towards a concept in this movie that nobody fucking asked for, which is Eddie and Venom, or Eddie and the symbiote, they're really close, aren't they? And it's like, well, the symbiote does unbelievably stupid shit constantly. Eddie doesn't like it, yet for some reason I'm supposed to believe that they have a close attachment to one another, when all that the symbiote does, because it's not Venom, all that the symbiote does is basically go off the rails and act like this goofy ass alien that's just new to everything on Earth. But again, he's able to access Eddie's memories, he knows what he wants, and again, going from the first movie, he never acted like this. But then upon encroaching onto the second one, which was so deranged and stupid, and then leading into this movie, it's like, well, now he's an unbearable presence. For whatever reason, I'm supposed to believe that Eddie has a connection with, that he cares about it, when all it's genuinely doing is kind of ruining his life. And then essentially, if he doesn't feed him or do what he wants, he's capable of eating him from the inside out. So, just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Now, again, not as bad as Joker 2. I gotta keep saying that. Not as bad as Joker 2. But I digress. So eventually you get to the point where, while they're traversing, after they leave the fucking hippie RV, you then have, because again, you got Kirk Connors, but you don't use him as Kirk Connors. Just, yeah, it's these hippies, and then they drop them off, and then for some reason they're important later on in the movie. They're just in the way, but they have them there. Why? I don't know. Just, again, all for the third act to make it seem like the stakes are higher, but they just impede on one of the worst aspects of any type of action scene. Everyone's standing around and looking at shit because, like, you just stand around and look at shit. Your life is in danger. Run. No, let's stand here and look at it. We're being shot at. Duck behind this car. All right. Hey, there's a clear sign to run. I was like, well, I'm gonna just stare at it. Run. The fuck. Like I said, this is not a good movie. This is not a good movie. But eventually, you have it. You have the hippie family drop Eddie off in Las Vegas. When they drop him off in Las Vegas, he just so happens to meet Mrs. Chen, the Asian lady that's in all three of the fucking movies. And then she got a penthouse. She's a lady that runs a convenience store in San Diego. And for some reason, she's able to pay for a Las Vegas trip where she got a penthouse. Whatever. And then she insists that Eddie and that Venom dances with her, to which she plays Dancing Queen. Great song, by the way, great song. But they play Dancing Queen, and then Venom transforms completely. The thing he's not supposed to do, because, which I also didn't mention, when he talks about Null, when he gives the exposition and everything, he speaks about him as if even saying his name is like worse than Voldemort levels of bad. Like, just don't even mention his name, because that's how bad Null is. And it's like, you don't want to mess with him. We can't transform. This is dangerous. These things that are chasing after us basically chop up people like they're goddamn garbage disposal. Yet, all of that goes right out the window because Mrs. Chen asks to dance with absolutely no concept of self, because you had it to where Venom was the one, or the symbiote was the one, that was aware of how dangerous everything is and was refusing to transform, thus having a lot of bad shit happen and whatnot. Yet, just to do this stupid ass dance number, he transformed, which then ushered in the alien coming to attack them, which apparently just, when they say they only see the codex, motherfucker, they only see the codex, and they lose their shit. Like, they just charge at wherever the codex is. And you have this happen for, again, no fucking reason. Only then to have Eddie and Venom untransform, and then immediately after they untransform, the military shows up. So then they capture him. And then upon capturing them, then it leads into the climactic ending, which is just basically you get more of the creatures from Null that are just looking after the Codex appearing, and then all of them are fighting Eddie at Area 51, where they release the rest of the symbiotes, and then you just got this big ass fight at the very end of it. Which, again, I have to reiterate, was a really good fight scene. I actually enjoyed the fight scene. I thought it was cool. But notice that I didn't talk about any of the. Notice that what I mentioned is just. Well, let's keep saying notice. But what I mentioned is just a fraction of the other stuff that they have within this movie that basically revolves around other characters outside of Venom. Apparently, there's a doctor whose brother died during the lightning strike when he was holding her hand so she wouldn't die because her brother was a real one. That shit was cool. And then she became a crazy scientist. But they didn't really go into depth with her character because I don't know why. And then you have another character that essentially constantly talked about family, and she had a Christmas pin from her mother, which obviously meant something important to her because it wasn't Christmas, but she was wearing it all the time. But she was like, it was from my mother. Yet you also had a military guy that made fun of her for having that Christmas pin because he was like, it's not Christmas. And she was like, but it's from my mom. And then he was like, that's stupid. And then it was like, why? And it's like, this is obviously a memento of some kind because even though, of course, if it's out of season and it has sentimental value, it has sentimental value. Why are you tripping? But the military guy was someone that apparently knew a lot about symbiotes, yet at the same time, they never really actively met a host with the symbiote. So you have to wonder where the fuck his knowledge came from. Also, where were you during the second movie when Carnage was doing shit? Also, they then have that military guy basically be the crazy military guy where it's like, I'm listening to a scientist who just wants to do science, but we need action. People are dying. We need military. I'm military. And then he do what all military do. I'm mad. I'm just so mad. A perfect thing that was stated was that my brother said that he was like a toned down Samuel Jackson from the Kong movie. Where it was like, I'm angry and I want revenge, but I'm not as crazy as Samuel Jackson was in that damn movie. Like the scene when it shows Samuel Jackson looking at Kong and he can see the fire from like the destruction of the helicopters. Perfect. Like, that was a great showcase of exactly how crazy he just made him based off of the fact that he blames him for the death of his men. That was great. Still don't like King Kong though. Still don't like that monkey. But he's not a monkey. But then essentially you got the ending fight scene. There's a sad little self-sacrifice thing, and then Null just kind of disappears until the end credit scene. Yeah, the very last end credit scene shows Null talking, and it doesn't matter. So if you want, don't stay for that. But that's basically all there is to this movie, and that was the unbelievably sad and disappointing part. You see, it seems as if they're trying to shift away from Venom for now so they can set up either doing their Sinister Six squad without Venom, or just to kind of have him appear later on, more so for like something like the Ultimate Carnage concept. The Codex they mentioned in the movie symbol is similar to that of the Ultimate Carnage symbol that he gets that appears on his forehead in the comics. So I can only assume that's what the intent behind that was. That and then essentially with again more so stuff happening at the end credits for Venom, that you would believe that hey, Venom is actually still alive, he's just not with Eddie currently. So I'm pretty sure it was one of those things where it's like they're no longer going to make a Venom movie, but that doesn't mean that the character Venom is going to not appear in movies from now on. It does still seem like, because I'm done with discussing the movie. Well, I'm done like trying to break down more of the movie, but this is more so my thoughts on like the overall intent that Sony is having with these movies. But it feels as if they're going to do more with the concept of the Sinister Six, but they still have absolutely no plans on doing anything with Spider-Man. Not outside of the realm of Disney Spider-Man, which is honestly is terrible because no one has came to the conclusion within the realm of Marvel characters to tackle any of these characters similar to the way that DC tackles characters. Now, this is again like just bear with me now. When Joker 2 did so much more harm within the mythos of comic book movies being respected than any type of good, considering the fact that the original Joker was a perfect outlier behind the concept of taking these characters, putting respect on their name, basically handling them in a perfect way, writing them well, putting them in a setting that makes sense, putting them in a world that fits within how they're supposed to be depicted, and then giving them that, essentially that voice that can elevate that character in a way that is appropriate for that character. DC has been the only ones to do that outside of the realm of trying to keep in one fucking franchise. I gotta cuss right now because of the fact of how aggravating this is. Marvel has so many characters that they are capable of showcasing, but because they are so hell bent on sticking to that one franchise format, they will always shoot themselves in the foot because you're never going to get that nitty gritty X-Men movie. You're never going to get that. You're never going to get the Avengers movie where they lose and that's just the end of the movie. You're never going to get those superheroes that essentially are the outliers compared to the more outstanding big shot superheroes. You're not going to get an expansive or bigger audience towards the multitude of different characters that they have. You're not going to get a superhero movie that stars Namor because of the fact that Namor was presented as a bad guy within Black Panther. You know, and it's like it's never going to come to fruition because of the way how they're handling these characters. And so with that being the mindset, Sony is also at fault because they decided to change the game by making Spider-Man villains be the main characters of their movies. An admirable idea if they essentially had the balls to still put Spider-Man in those movies, because that's where these villains come from. That is the spark that drives them, is that they are his villains. So just have him in the movie outside of the fact of it being Tom Holland, not going along the concept of that only one actor can play this character at a time, or that it'll confuse the audience or anything like that. None of that will ever happen. Yet you are dealing with people who essentially have no type of creativity whatsoever, no type of respect for the characters, and no type of understanding on exactly what these characters need in order for them to thrive. Venom 3 is a perfect example of taking a character that his literal concept behind his name comes from the fact that he considers himself Spider-Man's poison. So he named himself Venom. He's his Venom. He is the biggest weakness Spider-Man could ever have. I know how you think. I know how your powers work. I know what you care about the most. I know where to get you. And it's like, I can even make it to where your powers don't work on me. But your greatest asset is your spider sense, and it does not work on me. I am literal poison to everything that you are. I'm Venom. And that is not showcased anywhere in any of these damn movies. And as someone who is a huge fan of Spider-Man, you can't help but hate that upon seeing this character. So at any point in time where there's something that's possibly redeemable about this character to actually make him seem worthwhile for the moniker of anti-hero or super villain or anything like that, they immediately take it away so they can have some goofy ass buddy cop moment. Him shoving the money into the slot machine, so you see Tom Hardy's hand flail about as he's pulling the slot machine up and down. It did nothing. It did nothing. It wasn't funny. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't goofy. It was nothing. It was just stupid filler. And again, it wasn't looking at it and being like, man, Tom Hardy sure can't act. It was just looking at it and being like, ah, boy. Remember in Mad Max when he didn't talk? Why'd he do that? He's a very talented actor. This is stupid. That's all. That's all my brain could think of. It's like, it's goofy. It's dumb. It doesn't do anything. Now, yeah. So for the most part, like I said, again, this is not as bad as Joker 2, but it is still a bad movie. That honestly, definitely could have been handled a hell of a lot better. There's multiple times in the movie where you can see cuts that essentially where characters either had far more things to say, or essentially there were incidents of reshoots where you can tell, well, this was just kind of put together on the fly because I don't think they know what they're doing. Everything was just kind of handled in in the notion of, hey, what's going on? How do we stop it? Oh, um, things happen for a reason. Whisper, whisper, whisper. Why are you whispering? Tell me what's going on right now. You have literally no reason to not explain to me what's going on right now, you goofy bastard. But that's all that this movie was. It was just so much unbelievable fluff, bad writing, bad characters, stupid concept, a bloated cast that went nowhere with anything that was going on. I didn't care about anybody outside of Eddie Brock, considering the fact he was the only returning character from the previous movies. The cop that was a returning character from the previous movies said nothing. Hell, it could even been a cool dynamic by having him have a symbiote that he kept actively talking to that he didn't want inside of him because of the fact that he hated them so much, considering what all happened in the second movie. Couldn't have that dichotomy. That would have been good writing. Then have it to where he doesn't even want to say what the symbiote wants to tell the humans because he's so furious at the fact that it's inside of him, keeping him alive, when he wants nothing to do with it whatsoever. That would have basically made sure that you didn't get rid of Wrath, which is what he was supposed to have, as well as make it to where he would be essentially a compromised a compromised witness or just someone that's you're unable to even talk to with this outside concept, or hell, it's like popping in my head while I'm talking. But he could have been essentially an opposite version of Eddie, where you see the benefits of the symbiote and the person working together, and then it's like, well, now you get what happens of someone who doesn't want the symbiote, and the symbiote and like the person and the symbiote fighting, but they need each other to survive. Especially that would have worked considering that with Wrath, he can't move to another host. So him being the offspring of an offspring, he can't move to another host, but he was incredibly powerful. But because of the fact that you would have that the detective really didn't want the symbiote inside of him, they were never able to fully merged into one being, so you never really got to see that. And you could just hint that later on for another movie if you were smart, but you're not, so go fuck yourself. Jesus Christ. But it's like, yeah, just looking at this movie, it was something where it's like, I can see kids and the simple minded truly just being enamored with this, but this movie is not. It's definitely not what people think it is. It is not fun by any metric, and realistically, it just does all the same points that Avengers Endgame had a habit of doing in order to sit there and make you think that you looked at this epic conclusion of a story when realistically you just looked at total bullshit because that's all they could muster out of their small, simple little brains. Maybe, just maybe, bear with me now, that writer's strike was like really bad. Like maybe they just they just suck. All right, that's it. I'm out of here.